dear, beautiful soup, so rich and green, waiting in a hot tureen. Who for such dainties would not stoop? Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Soup of the evening, beautiful soup. Beautiful soup. Beautiful soup. Soup of the evening. Beautiful, beautiful soup. Beautiful soup, who cares for fish, game, or any other dish? Who would not give all else for 2 pennyworth only of beautiful soup? Pennyworth only of beautiful soup. Beautiful soup. Beautiful soup. Soup of the evening. Beautiful, beautiful soup.
He thought he saw an elephant that practiced on a fife. He looked again and found it was a letter from his wife. At length I realize, he said, the bitterness of life. He thought he saw a buffalo upon the chimney-piece. He looked again and found it was his sister's husband's niece. Unless you leave this house, he said, I'll send for the police. He thought he saw a rattlesnake that questioned him in Greek. He looked again and found it was the middle of next week. The one thing I regret, he said, is that it cannot speak. He thought he saw a banker's clerk descending from the bus. He looked again and found it was a hippopotamus. If this should stay to dine, he said, there won't be much for us. He thought he saw a kangaroo that worked a coffee mill. He looked again and found it was a vegetable pill. Were I to swallow this, he said, I should be very ill. He thought he saw a coach and 4 that stood beside his bed. He looked again and found it was a bear without a head. Poor thing, he said, poor silly thing, it's waiting to be fed. He thought he saw an albatross that fluttered round the lamp. He looked again and found it was a penny postage stamp. You'd best be getting home, he said, the nights are very damp. He thought he saw an argument that proved he was the Pope. He looked again and found it was a bar of mottled soap. A fact so dread, he faintly said, extinguishes all hope.
"'Tis the voice of the lobster," I heard him declare. "You have baked me too brown. I must sugar my hair." As a duck with its eyelids, so he with his nose trims his belt and his buttons and turns out his toes. When the sands are all dry, he's as gay as a lark, and will talk in contemptuous tones of the shark. But when the tide rises and sharks are around, his voice has a timid and tremulous sound.
I passed by his garden and marked with one eye how the owl and the panther were sharing the pie. The panther took pie crust and gravy and meat, while the owl had the dish as its share of the treat. When the pie was all finished, the owl, as a boon, was kindly permitted to pocket the spoon, while the panther received knife and fork with a growl, and concluded the banquet by,
"You are old, Father William," the young man said, "and your hair has become very white, and yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age it is right?" "In my youth," Father William replied to his son, "I feared it might injure the brain, but now that I'm perfectly sure I have none, why, I do it again and again." "You are old," said the youth, "as I mentioned before, and have grown most uncommonly fat. yet you turned a back somersault in at the door. Pray, what is the reason of that? In my youth, said the sage as he shook his grey locks, I kept all my limbs very supple by the use of this ointment. 1 shilling the box. Allow me to sell you a couple? You are old, said the youth, and your jaws are too weak for anything tougher than suet. Yet you finished the goose with the bones and the beak. Pray, how did you manage to do it? In my youth, said his father, I took to the law and argued each case with me wife, and the muscular strength which it gave to me jaw has lasted the rest of me life. You are old, said the youth. One would hardly suppose that your eye was as steady as ever. Yet you balanced an eel on the end of your nose. What made you so awfully clever? I have answered 3 questions, and that is enough, said his father. Don't give yourself airs. Do you think I can listen all day to such stuff? Be off, or I'll kick you downstairs.
Little birds are dining warily and well, hid in mossy's cell, hid, I say, by waiters, gorgeous in their gaiters. I've a tale to tell. Little birds are feeding justices with jam, rich in frizzled ham, rich, I say, in oysters, haunting shady cloisters. That is what I am. Little birds are teaching tigresses to smile, innocent of guile. Smile, I say, not smirkle, mouth a semicircle. That's the proper style. Little birds are sleeping all among the pins, where the loser wins, where, I say, he sneezes when and how he pleases. So the tale begins. There was a pig that sat alone beside a ruined pump. By day and night he made his moan. It would have stirred a heart of stone to see him wring his hoofs and groan, because he could not jump. A certain camel heard him shout, a camel with a hump. Oh, is it grief or is it gout? What is this bellowing about? That pig replied with quivering snout, because I cannot jump. That camel scanned him dreamy-eyed. Methinks you are too plump. I never knew a pig so wide, that wobbled so from side to side, who could, however much he tried, do such a thing as jump. Yet, mark those trees 2 miles away, all clustered in a clump. If you could trot there twice a day, nor ever pause for rest or play, in the far future, who can say? You may be fit to jump. That camel passed and left him there beside the ruined pump. Oh, horrid was that pig's despair. His shrieks of anguish filled the air. He wrung his hoofs, he rent his hair, because he could not jump. There was a frog that wandered by, a sleek and shining lump, inspected him with fishy eye, and said, "Oh, pig, what makes you cry?" And bitter was that pig's reply, "Because I cannot jump." That frog, he grinned a grin of glee, and hit his chest a thump. "Oh, pig," he said, "be ruled by me, and you shall see what you shall see. This minute for a trifling fee, I'll teach you how to jump. You may be faint from many a fall, and bruised by many a bump, but if you persevere through all, and practice first on something small, concluding with a 10-foot wall, you'll find that you can jump." That pig looked up with joyful start. "Oh, frog, you are a trump. Your words have healed my inward smart. Come, name your fee and do your part. Bring comfort to a broken heart by teaching me to jump." "My fee shall be a mutton chop, my goal this ruined pump. Observe with what an airy flop I plant myself upon the top. Now bend your knees and take a hop, for that's the way to jump." Up rose that pig and rushed full whack against the ruined pump, rolled over like an empty sack, and settled down upon his back, while all his bones at once went crack. It was a fatal jump. Little birds are writing interesting books to be read by cooks. Read, I say, not roasted. Letterpress, when toasted, loses its good looks. Little birds are playing bagpipes on the shore, where the tourists snore. Thanks, they say, 'tis thrilling. Take this shilling. Let us have no more. Little birds are bathing crocodiles in cream, like a happy dream. Like, but not so lasting, crocodiles when fasting are not all they seem. That camel passed as day grew dim around the ruined pump. Oh, broken heart, oh, broken limb, it needs, that camel said to him, something more fairy-like and slim to execute a jump. That pig lay still as any stone, and could not stir a stump, nor ever, if the truth were known, was he again observed to moan, nor ever wring his hoofs and groan, because he could not jump. That frog made no remark, for he was dismal as a dump. He knew the consequence must be that he would never get his fee, and still he sits in misery upon that ruined pump. Little birds are choking baronets with bun, taught to fire a gun, taught, I say, to splinter salmon in the winter, merely for the fun. Little birds are hiding crimes in carpet bags, blessed by happy stags. Blessed, I say, though beaten, since our friends are eaten when the memory flags. Little birds are tasting gratitude and gold, pale with sudden cold, pale, I say, and wrinkled, when the bells have tinkled and the tale is told.
In winter, when the fields are white, I sing this song for your delight. In spring, when woods are getting green, I'll try and tell you what I mean. In summer, when the days are long, perhaps you'll understand the song. In autumn, when the leaves are brown, take pen and ink and write it down. I sent a message to the fish. I told them, this is what I wish. The little fishes of the sea, they sent an answer back to me. The little fishes' answer was, we cannot do it, sir, because. I sent to them again to say, it will be better to obey. The fishes answered with a grin, why, what a temper you are in. I told them once, I told them twice, they would not listen to advice. I took a kettle large and new, fit for the deed I had to do. My heart went hop, my heart went thump, I filled the kettle at the pump. Then someone came to me and said, the little fishes are in bed. I said to him, and I said it plain, then you must wake them up again. I said it very loud and clear. I went and shouted in his ear. But he was very stiff and proud. He said, you needn't shout so loud. And he was very proud and stiff. He said, I'd go and wake them if. I took a corkscrew from the shelf. I went to wake them up myself. And when I found the door was locked, I pulled and pushed, I kicked and knocked. And when I found the door was shut, I tried to turn the handle, but...
Will you walk a little faster? Said a whiting to a snail. There's a porpoise close behind us, and he's treading on my tail. See how eagerly the lobsters and the turtles all advance. They're waiting on the shingle. Will you come and join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you join the dance? You can really have no notion how delightful it will be when they take us up and throw us with the lobsters out to sea. But the snail replied, too far, and gave a look askance. Said he thanked the whiting kindly, but he would not join the dance. Would not, could not, would not, could not, would not join the dance. Would not, could not, would not, could not join the dance. What matters it how far we go, his scaly friend replied. The further off from England, the nearer is to France. There is another shore, you know, upon the other side. Then turn not pale, beloved snail, but come and join the dance. Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance?
I'll tell thee everything I can. There's little to relate. I saw an aged man a-sitting on a gate. Who are you, aged man, I said, and how is it you live? And his answer trickled through my head like water through a sieve. He said, I look for butterflies that sleep among the wheat. I make them into mutton pies and sell them in the street. I sell them unto men, he said, who sail on stormy seas. And that's the way I get my bread. A trifle, if you please. But I was thinking of a plan to dye one's whiskers green, and always use so large a fan that they could not be seen. So, having no reply to give to what the old man said, I cried, Come, tell me how you live, and thumped him on the head. His accents mild took up the tale. He said, I go my ways, and when I find a mountain rill, I set it in a blaze, and thence they make a stuff they call Rowland's Macassar oil, yet twopence halfpenny is all they give me for my toil. But I was thinking of a way to feed oneself on batter, and so go on from day to day, getting a little fatter. I shook him well from side to side until his face was blue. Come, tell me how you live, I cried, and what is it you do? He said, I hunt for haddock's eyes among the heather bright, and work them into waistcoat buttons in the silent night. And these I do not sell for gold or coin of silvery shine, but for a copper halfpenny, and that will purchase 9. I sometimes dig for buttered rolls, or set limed twigs for crabs. I sometimes search the grassy knolls for wheels of handsome cabs, and that's the way, he gave a wink, by which I get my wealth, and very gladly will I drink your honour's noble health. I heard him then, for I had just completed my design to keep the Menai Bridge from rust by boiling it in wine. I thanked him much for telling me the way he got his wealth, but chiefly for his wish that he might drink my noble health. And now, if e'er by chance I put my fingers into glue, or madly squeeze a right-hand foot into a left-hand shoe, or if I drop upon my toe a very heavy weight, I weep. For it reminds me so of that old man I used to know, whose look was mild, whose speech was slow, whose hair was whiter than the snow, whose face was very like a crow, with eyes like cinders all aglow, who seemed distracted with his woe, who rocked his body to and fro, and muttered mumblingly and low, as if his mouth were full of dough, who snorted like a buffalo that summer evening long ago, a-sitting on the gate.
The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright, and this was odd, because it was the middle of the night. The moon was shining sulkily, because she thought the sun had got no business to be there after the day was done. It's very rude of him, she said, to come and spoil the fun. The sea was wet as wet could be, the sands were dry as dry. You couldn't see a cloud because no cloud was in the sky. No birds were flying overhead. There were no birds to fly. The walrus and the carpenter were walking close at hand. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. If this were only cleared away, they said, it would be grand. If 7 maids with 7 mops swept it for half a year, do you suppose, the walrus said, that they could get it clear? I doubt it, said the carpenter, and shed a bitter tear. O oysters, come and walk with us, the walrus did beseech. A pleasant walk, a pleasant talk along the briny beach. We cannot do with more than 4 to give a hand to each. The eldest oyster looked at him, but never a word he said. The eldest oyster winked his eye, and shook his heavy head, meaning to say he did not choose to leave the oyster bed. But 4 young oysters hurried up, all eager for the treat. Their coats were brushed, their faces washed, their shoes were clean and neat. And this was odd, because, you know, they hadn't any feet. 4 other oysters followed them, and yet another 4, and thick and fast they came at last, and more and more and more, all hopping through the frothing waves and scrambling to the shore. The walrus and the carpenter walked on a mile or so, and then they rested on a rock, conveniently low. And all the little oysters stood and waited in a row. "The time has come," the walrus said, "to talk of many things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax, of cabbages and kings, and why the sea is boiling hot, and whether pigs have wings." "But wait a bit," the oysters cried, "before we have our chat, for some of us are out of breath, and all of us are fat." "No hurry," said the carpenter. They thanked him much for that. "A loaf of bread," the walrus said, "is what we chiefly need. Pepper and vinegar besides are very good indeed. Now, if you're ready, oysters dear, we can begin to feed." "But not on us," the oysters cried, turning a little blue. "After such kindness, that would be a dismal thing to do." "The night is fine," the walrus said. "Do you admire the view? It was so kind of you to come, and you are very nice." The carpenter said nothing, but cut us another slice. "I wish you were not quite so deaf. I've had to ask you twice." "It seems a shame," the walrus said, "to play them such a trick, after we brought them out so far and made them trot so quick." The carpenter said nothing, but the butter spread too thick. "I weep for you," the walrus said. "I deeply sympathize." With sobs and tears he sorted out those of the largest size, holding his pocket handkerchief before his streaming eyes. "Oh, oysters," said the carpenter, "you've had a pleasant run. Shall we be trotting home again?" But answer came there none, and this was scarcely odd, because they'd eaten every one.
'Twas brillig, and the slithy toads did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the burgoes, and the morass out grabe. Beware the jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the jube bird, and shun the frumiest bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the maxim foe he sought. So rested he by the tum-tum tree, and stood a while in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffling through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through, the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. "And hast thou slain the jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O frabious day, callooh, callay," he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toads did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the burgoes, and the mome raths out grabe.